can't now, so I'm not sure.
I just turned my camera off.
Oh,
Because procedurally, I'm not supposed to have my camera on during the meeting. Oops.
You just said this was the first time we'd see you, and I still haven't seen you, but that's okay.
she's as welcoming looking as you would imagine.
All right. Sounds good.
It was my first time seeing her, and I was like, Andrew, oh my God, like, it's so funny. What a bizarre world.
So we are live.
All right, great. So I'm going to start by calling the meeting to order. I am going to read our kind of long script here since it's been a little while since we've had one of these, and might have some new people joining us online as audience members, or a few new members of the committee that are joining us for the first time. So good afternoon, everyone, including the members of the public who could be watching this via a live webcast. My name is Erica Armstrong, and I'm the chair of the Design Review Committee. And I welcome you to this virtual meeting being held on June 10th, 2021. And I just want to say it's great to see a lot of the faces of the committee members here for the first time. For us, it's a lot of first times putting face to names. So the Design Review Committee is a volunteer committee made up of local residents, including several members with professional expertise in architecture, landscape architecture, urban design, and structural engineering. The purpose of the Design Review Committee is to aid in the evaluation of site plan approval applications and wind impact assessments for the development within the Downtown Halifax plan governed by the Downtown Halifax Land Use Bylaw. The Design Review Committee assesses applications for conformity with the Downtown Halifax Design Manual and advises municipal staff accordingly. So that's what we're up to. So I will ask the members to say here as I read their names. So Julian.
Madam Chair, he hasn't signed into the meeting yet.
Thank you. Nathan.
I'm here, thank you.
Hi, Nathan. Jessica.
I'm here.
Hi, Jess. Jan.
I'm here. Hi, everyone.
And Sarah.
Here.
Hi, Sarah. Brent.
Hi, Madam Chair. Brent has not signed into the meeting.
Okay. Marilee.
Hello, I'm here.
Hi, Marilee. Nice to put a face to the vice chair name here.
First time.
Yes. And Christina.
Madam Chair, Christina has not signed in.
Okay, great. So I will read the staff members that are present, and I'll read your name, but if you could introduce yourself and your title and role in the meeting, that would be great. So Carl.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Carl Purvis, Planning Applications Program Manager.
Thank you. Ben.
Yeah. Good evening, Chair and committee members. Ben Seaback, Community Policy Program Manager, and I'm here tonight. Pleased to be here tonight to present Center Plan Package B.
Thank you. Dali.
Hi, I'm Dali Snell. I'm a senior planner with the Center Plan team, and I'm here along with Ben to hopefully answer some questions about relating to Center Plan.
And I hope I'm pronouncing this right. I had a friend in high school with this name. This is how she pronounced it. Kazia?
Madam Chair, Cassia will not be attending the meeting.
Okay, no worries. Eric?
I can just, no, he just texted me. He was trying to find the right Zoom link, so I just forwarded it to him, so he may be joining a little bit late.
No worries. And Karen?
Hi, good afternoon, Chair. Karen Brown, and I'm the solicitor for your meeting today.
Hi, Karen. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Andrea?
Hi, Madam Chair and fellow members of the committee. I'm Andrea Lavassie Wood, and I am your legislative assistant.
Yay, Andrea. And Alicia.
Good afternoon, Alicia Wall, and I'll be taking the minutes.
Hi, Alicia. Nice to see you again. Been a while since our last meeting, and then even longer since we've seen each other in person. So now we will move to the approval of the minutes from March 11th. So can I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 11th?
I will motion to approve.
I think that was Jess.
Yes.
And can I get a seconder?
Narrowly, I'll second it.
Thank you. And are there any errors or omissions noted by anyone? All right, so I'll now call for the question. All those in favor, if you can signify by saying yay, or any contrary minded saying nay.
Yay.
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 Yay. All right, motion is carried. So now we'll go to the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. All right, so and are there any additions or modifications to the agenda?
Madam Chair, there are no additions or deletions to the agenda from the clerk's office.
Thank you. Members, do you have any further modifications to bring forward or reordering of our one item? All right, so can I have a motion to approve the agenda? The motion requires a mover and a seconder. If you can identify yourself by name.
I'll move that we accept the agenda. Jam.
I can second it, Jess.
Thank you. So I'll call for the question to approve the agenda as circulated. All those in favor, yay. All those not in favor, nay.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay. Okay, motion passed. So there's no business arriving out of the minutes. So now I'll call for a declaration of conflict of interest. So I'll ask the committee members if anybody does have any conflict of interest to declare, and just as a reminder that you'll just mute yourself in this virtual format if you have a conflict of item being discussed that comes up. So does anybody want to declare any conflicts? All right, great. So there's no item 6, there's no consideration of deferred business. Item 7 is correspondence, petitions, and delegations. So I'll ask Andrea to go over the correspondence received.
Yes, Madam Chair. The committee received correspondence in relation to item number 9.1.4, and that's correspondence was circulated to the committee.
All right. So I'll just share that the correspondence relates to the Young Avenue area, which is outside of the downtown Halifax land use bylaws. So it's not within the Design Review Committee's mandate to make recommendations regarding this plan area. So if any members of the committee do have any concerns about the issues raised in the correspondence, then we'll be able to speak to our purview in our jurisdiction of what we cover as part of package B. So we can chat about that during the presentation and question period. So is there anything that the committee wants to discuss regarding that correspondence right now? There's really like take no action, request the legislative assistant to draft a response, forward the correspondence to a relevant staff member for response, or request staff to provide the committee with further information on a topic arising out of the correspondence.
Do we know if that letter was also circulated to the group that would be responsible for that particular area?
Marilee, the correspondence was just addressed to the Design Review Committee, so it was just circulated to your committee.
So I see Ben has his hand up, so he maybe has something to speak to this.
Yes, if I may, through Madam Chair, I just will note that I don't know if it's the exact same letter, but the same concerns from the same person was the letter was sent to different review committees looking at Central Plan Package B. In fact, it was just discussed at the Heritage Advisory Committee yesterday. The same topic. So just a note for the committee that the concerns are being looked at by other committees that have a different scope of review of Package B.
I mean, for us to ensure that that letter and who it needs to be addressed, who would be the proper person to have purview over it, could we, Andrea, have it sent to Carl maybe, or whoever the right person is to take it down?
Well, actually, it's been circulated to Ben and his team. So they're the staff that are responsible for considering any sort of changes or adaptations to Central Plan Package B. So it's already been circulated to the appropriate staff members.
All right. Does the committee feel comfortable with that then? I think Jan has her hand up.
So just to confirm, so we can be assured that there will be a reasonable response to that correspondence. I think out of consideration for the issues that were raised, it deserves response, but I'm just sort of asking for confirmation of that.
I mean, what I could do is I could email him back and to say that the Design Review Committee received his correspondence, but whereas the Young Avenue area is not within your jurisdiction, that you weren't able to consider the modifications that he's making. This ultimately is going to be going to a public hearing in front of Regional Council. So we could ask him to redirect his correspondence to Regional Council.
Could we do that on his behalf so that he doesn't have to take that additional
No,
step?
it's his responsibility to do that.
Oh, okay.
Would you like me to do that, Madam Chair?
How does the committee feel about that?
I think it's worthwhile to give it at least a response that we recognize we've received it and that it is outside of our purview.
I agree.
Yeah, but that it will be given due consideration through the appropriate channels.
Yeah, Andrea, if you want to just draft that and then run it by me and then we can send it off.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you. All right. So petitions, there are none. Information items brought forward, there are none. So now we're at reports and discussions. So we have first 9.1.1, any upcoming applications. So I'll send it over to Carl for that.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So we do in fact have a few applications that the committee should be seeing at some time in the not too distant future. There are three of them, so I'll go through them. The first is going to be case 23663. So this is an application for an 8-story building at 1138 to 1146 Barrington Street. So this is on the west side of the newly renamed Peace and Friendship Park. Along the west side of that. And some of the committee members who have been around for a little while may remember that this was originally case 22511 that was refused by the Design Review Committee back in November of 2019. So that was a building where the Design Review Committee decided that that didn't meet the sort of the intent and the standards of the design manual specifically. The committee was looking for some more distinct articulation, and some more architectural features to reinforce sort of the prominence and the historic setting that they felt was there. So there is a new design. It's different materiality, a different roof line, more of a mansard, or a sort of a play, I suppose, on a mansard roof, and a different street elevation. So the consultation is now complete in terms of the public engagement. So we do have a full application. So we're in the process of writing up a staff report, so I'm expecting that will be in front of the committee quite soon. The second application that I wanted to speak to you about was case 23185. And that is an application for a 12-story building at 1649 Bedford Row. So this part of Bedford Row, that's a pretty narrow mid-block site on the east side of Bedford Row between Prince and Sackville. So this is a building. It's got relatively modest in terms of 33 units, one commercial unit on the ground floor. Engagement is happening now. A virtual open house, which is what we can do these days, will be held on Wednesday, June the 16th from 7 to 9 p.m. And there is a website that's currently active right now where engagement has been completed on the first application. That one doesn't have a website currently up, but the applicant does have a website per the public engagement requirements. And I've circulated that to Andrea. So she should be able to circulate that to you all so that you can have a look. Oh, and I just got the email, so maybe that's on its way to you as well. The third application I'll speak to you about, case 23107. And that is quite a prominent application. That's the former Mills Brothers site. So that is on the west, or to the west of the library on the south side of Spring Garden Road. It's the full block length, though not the full block depth of that property there. It's a 8-story mixed-use building bound by Birmingham, Spring Garden, and Queen. And to the rear of the property would be the Mary Ann building, that existing building that's newer, maybe in the last 5-6 years, that's been constructed backing on there. So as you would expect, a pretty significant amount of commercial space in that building, just given its setting, in addition to 7 stories of residential above. And that would be a total of 216 units. So in terms of the point in the process that this one is on, the public meeting has been completed, but the public sort of consultation period is still open, and they're still seeking and receiving feedback from the public until June 21st. So that application also still has a website up. So that should be along with the information that Andrea will send along as well. So where 2 of these are currently in the engagement process, and 1 of them is already into the full application process, I would expect that the first one, it might be as soon as the July meeting, and the subsequent one not being long after that. Once they get through the pre-application process, they tend to move along pretty quickly. So I would expect these 3 applications to be in front of the committee in the coming months. That's all from me, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. So I think we kind of put this in the agenda to give us some planning purposes because we only have 2-hour-long meetings. My concern is that all 3 are going to come forward at the July meeting, given that the Mills site will be done public engagement by June 21st, and it's a quick turn. You said they have a fairly quick turnaround through the last bit of the process and coming forward to the committee. So what do you think the likelihood that all 3 are going to be coming at our next July meeting?
I would say slim to none in terms of all 3 at the same meeting. I would say it's possible it's possible that 2 of them would meet. I would say there's a good chance that the Barrington one, but the slim to none that all 3 would be on there.
Okay,
once we've deemed the applications complete, we have 60 days for you guys to make a decision. So we, as you know, we try to get you the reports and the information as quickly as possible in that. But we tend to use about 35 or 40 of those days, as you guys know, to get you that information.
Okay, so that's fine. And we don't have a heads up on how many bylaws that they are going to, we don't have that type of information at this point on how many
Variances?
Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. Variances will be outside that we will need to review, because that's really what eats up most of our meeting time. So it's like, if they all have 1, then I'm not so worried about it. But if they all have a bunch, then I want to start thinking about, are we going to need 2 meetings in July, 2 meetings in August, whatever.
We do have a sense of that. So the Mills Brother application, I believe it has 5 variances, whereas the Bedford Row application, I believe it has 1, possibly 2, if I'm remembering. And I believe the Barrington Street application, it was somewhere in between the 2, but where some heritage components are there, that might be in a sort of an additional, a bit of an additional level of complexity, notwithstanding that it has a more modest number of variances. So there's there's kind of a small, medium, and a large option here, I think.
Okay, so I think if we only have the Barrington one in the July meeting, given its possible complexities, that's good. And then if the other one is 1 to 2 variances and the other one is 5, we can probably deal with that within one meeting, but we'll kind of flesh that out as it comes up. Any other thoughts from the committee? Jan?
Just a question, with the 2 websites on the Bedford Row and the Mills Brothers, that's helpful because we can go there and and sort of begin to become more familiar with those projects. But is there any way of getting any early information on the Barrington Street one?
Through Ms. Chair, I don't have anything to provide you at this point. Where the responsibility in the bylaw, we've sort of turned it in terms of what it would usually be in a development agreement or other different processes that we have in the municipality. It's their website, so they post it, they put it up, and ultimately they take it down. So we've got this, the engagement's open for the 2 of them. That window's closed where we now have the full application. The next step is basically you'll get the full package with all of the details, the comprehensive set that we'll have along with the staff report.
All right, but we do appreciate you providing all this pre-information so we can get prepared. Any other questions from the committee regarding upcoming applications? All right, great. So we'll move to 9.1.3, the overview of the center plan package B with a presentation from Ben.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, committee members. If it's okay with everyone, I'm going to share my screen and dive into the presentation. Okay. Let's get this working. Can everyone see that? Yes. Okay, I see some nodding. Yeah, well, I think I've already introduced myself, Ben Seaback, Program Manager, Community Policy Program Manager, which is I'm really fortunate to be in leading the charge on the Central Plan Package B process. I just want to acknowledge while I'm fortunate to be here in front of you, it's an exciting time for the Central Plan process, kind of the final stretch of a long road. I want to acknowledge all the different staff teams, not just the Central Plan team and Dali Silla, who is here as well, but also all of P&D have contributed to reviews and internal comments, and also other planning development departments, including legal staff, Karen Brown, who is with us today as a municipal solicitor, as well as Park and Recreation and Integrated Mobility team. So just to say, I'm pleased to be here presenting, but it's the whole team of staff that has worked on this over the last number of years. So the outline for today, I'm going to try to provide a detailed enough overview without taking up while providing lots of time for discussion and questions. I'll be hitting on the Central Plan context and planning process to give a sense of how we've gotten to where we are in terms of the process and all the consultations. Providing a brief overview of Package A, so that's the first phase of the Central Plan, and it was contained in that. I'll be spending most of the presentation focused on the Package B overview with a focus on the downtown Halifax zone and plan area. So I think as discussed earlier in this meeting, the scope of this committee is really the HRM by design plan area, or the downtown Halifax. Central Plan is proposing to replace it with a Central Plan framework. So I'll be focusing on that part of the plan. What's the difference between the existing plan and the proposed plan? So we can kind of focus discussions on that component. And then from there, I'll briefly touch on governance, the continued role of the DRC committee, the repeal and amendments of existing planning documents, because we are talking about amending the existing downtown Halifax plan, the remaining committee and council review process, and finally ending with recommendations. Okay, but first of all, to set the stage in the context, as this committee may be aware of, the Central Plan is part of a broader secondary plan and bylaw simplification program. You know, to put it in simple terms, is the HRM, for a variety of reasons, has kind of overly complex and fragmented planning framework. not so much at a regional scale, but really at the what we call the secondary plan scale, which is kind of where all the detailed zoning and development agreement policies, all the detailed land use regulations are housed. A lot of different plans with different definitions and different ways of regulating things, which have their strengths, but in the context of HRM also have their challenges, and many of them that needing updated. And the first phase is the center plan process, partly because it's was one of the most active areas in terms of development, but also contains some of the oldest plans. And really leading the charge has been the HRM by design process, which dates back to over a decade ago. So the center plan process itself has been ongoing for some time. I think, as I just mentioned, I think you can probably date back the origins of discussions of the concept of the center plan actually back to the downtown planning process, the HRM by design planning process. But the center plan process, as we know it, really started in September 2015 with the initiation of background studies and community engagement, where there has been some broad-based community visioning process to understand residents' thoughts about density and location and building design. From there, there was a period of what we call kind of guiding direction, where the center plan policy framework, what we refer to as a purple document, was developed, and where council provided the kind of higher level policy direction to preparing the detailed planning documents. I'll also note that there was a downtown Halifax plan engagement between 2015 and 2018. During earlier phases of central plan, I guess that the downtown Halifax plan was on a different track of the central plan, but through that work and the efforts to consolidate all the various plans, it is being folded into the central planning process to ensure that we can have kind of one plan and bylaw that governs all of the regional center. And as committee members are probably aware, a central plan being such a big geography and dealing with kind of a number of different big topics, it was split into two processes. So the first phase, known as Package A, focused on the high growth areas, and it was approved in September 2019, as is currently in effect in various parts of the regional center. And Package B, which is the current phase, is covering all remaining areas with the intention of resulting in one comprehensive plan. So it's not as though we're going to have a Package A and a Package B plan. It's going to Package B actually builds on Package A and fleshes out the rest of the plan, also pulling in downtown Halifax plan area into the center plan framework as well. So in terms of Package B, like many different municipal projects, not just in Halifax, but around the world, really, we're very much impacted by the COVID-19 state of emergency. So just prior to that pandemic, we were able to hold 10 pop-ups and 12 stakeholder sessions, including one on the downtown Halifax section of the plan. However, the 8 public meetings that were scheduled at the time had to be canceled due to the social distancing measures that were put in place. Since that time, myself and the staff team and the different committees involved pivoted to more of an online virtual format engagement, and really using any kind of tools we could use to gather the important public feedback on the plan. This included switching to virtual community design advisory committee meetings, similar to how we're using a virtual format here. Various social media and correspondence, and we got a lot of different emails and phone calls. We published 10 online surveys on different central plan topics and received quite a bit of responses. We held virtual stakeholder meetings wherever possible. And during the last phases of the process, focused on the established residential components, which is the kind of largest part of the Package B, and the St. Patrick Alexandra site, building on the council direction to consider different development options for that site. And just to highlight for committee members, all the engagement through the Package B process is compiled in a What We Heard report that is posted on the Central Plan webpage. It outlines all the engagement processes I just outlined in much more detail, the feedback that we received, the key themes, the detailed survey summaries, the focused consultation on the St. Patrick Alexandra site, and it attaches all the correspondence in the site-specific requests as well. So it's a resource for this committee or for anybody who wants to understand what was heard during the Package B engagement process. Okay, enough of the process and the background. I'm going to touch on package A to kind of flesh out the context of the downtown Halifax area. And this is the part that was already being improved by regional council. So first, just to touch on package A is like any plan, included some guiding principles, in this case called core concepts that really guide the overall policies and approach to regulations under the plan. And this includes complete communities, which is about ensuring people have access to variety of shops and service and open spaces in areas ideally within walking distance where people live. A focus on human scale design, pedestrians first, and strategic growth. The package A designations, which I referred to as high growth areas, included a downtown Dartmouth, the centers, places like Quinpool Road and Wise Road, which both the downtown and the centers were areas where the growth is targeted, both commercial and residential, and where some of the larger scale buildings are permitted. The corridor zones, which were applied along major transit routes, which support more of a mid-rise form and also mixed use, also commercial uses. The higher order residential, which allows for more kind of multi-unit residential developments, but with more of a focus on residential and less ability to do commercial. And then also the future growth nodes, which are areas targeted for master neighborhood planning, places like Shannon Park and some of the shopping mall areas that can accommodate significant growth in the years ahead. And without going into too much detail, the package A, the approved package A, also established policies for a number of different areas, including urban design. So I think that the urban design part of the package A very much builds on the direction from the HRM by design work, but applies it to all the regional center. Strong focus on cultural and heritage, including identifying proposed heritage conservation districts, housing, including support for affordable housing, economic development, mobility, which is about with the most important piece about kind of coordinating investments in transit and mobility in where we direct densities, the environment, and also the implementation section, which outlined the various tools that I'll touch on a little bit later. Okay, again, that was a brief overview of package A, just to put in context the full plan. Diving into package B, and again, I'll focus on the downtown Halifax portion of the plan. So first and foremost, the downtown designation, as I mentioned, is being proposed to be pulled into the central plan framework. Through package A, it was applied to downtown Dartmouth, and through package B, it's also proposed to be applied to downtown Halifax. And of course, it's intended to support development in the core where the largest scale and the most intense mix of uses are encouraged. The downtown designation establishes a downtown Halifax zone in 8 special areas. I should highlight that the 2009 downtown Halifax plan, so the existing plan, will continue to apply to the Barrington Street and Old South Southern Heritage Conservation District, so the existing heritage conservation districts. And this is because of the complexity with working under the heritage legislation. A bit more time and process is needed to bring those plans into the central plan framework, and that's being worked on under the downtown Halifax Heritage Conservation District plan, which is going to be looking at creating one overall kind of heritage conservation district document for all of downtown Halifax. As part of that, one proposed heritage conservation is proposed, the historic properties, and again, that will be looked at as one being brought into as part of one larger, at least one umbrella document for the heritage conservation districts in downtown Halifax. There are 9 pedestrian-oriented commercial streets proposed, and that's an increase of the 2 under the existing downtown plan. And also note that there are the detailed policies for the Cogswell area are to be incorporated following the completion of the master infrastructure plans for this area. So following some more detailed subdivision and design work for the Cogswell, as the road network is closed, we're anticipating launching another planning process just after package B is approved to have to make decisions about details about building heights and urban design for that portion of the plan. So get into a bit more detail about the downtown designation and how it compares to the existing downtown plan. Like the current plan, in the downtown Halifax zone, density is regulated by maximum building heights, subject to the Halifax Citadel view planes and ramparts. So while the other under package A, floor area ratio was used to control density in places like the centers, that's the overall size of the building. In downtown Halifax, because there are building height is limited by view planes and ramparts, height continues to be thought as the best way of controlling density in the downtown Halifax zone. A change from the existing downtown Halifax plan is that there are only maximum building heights instead of this pre and post building heights, with 20% of the floor area over 2,000 square meters subject to bonus zoning requirements. So a bit of a change in the bonus zoning approach, it kind of being brought to be more consistent with the package A approach, where it's applied to any buildings above 2,000 square meters instead of based on height. And the categories for bonus zoning would also align with the categories for package A. Another change is the establishing or application of the institutional INS University and College 2 zone, UC2, and the PCF Parks Community Facility zones for certain properties located in the downtown Halifax area to replace the former ICO zones that currently cover those areas. The wind and shadow performance standards are also generally carried forward under the downtown Halifax zone. So the existing downtown Halifax plan established the wind performance standards, and those were built upon and carried and applied to all the central plan package A areas, and through package B proposed to apply it to all portions of the plan. And I think the new standard is the shadow performance, and that's intended to control, I guess, to prevent too much shadow on some of the identified public parks. So that's a new part supposed to be applied to the downtown Halifax area. Some of the most significant changes is the change is to move towards a land use bylaw design requirements instead of using the design manual. And I think this can be best described as transitioning from guidelines to more of a form-based code. And again, this builds on the package A process, where I think HRM by design established kind of the principles and the overall framework for things like street walls and articulation and glazing. Package A codified this in the land use bylaw. They kind of put it into parameters, and package B is building on that by streamlining the approval process and putting more emphasis on the variations that can benefit from some public input and committee advice. So the site plan approval process for downtown Halifax would align with the central plan framework, proposed to be used for variations only, and it also includes an updated site plan variation criteria. And I'll have one more slide to get into a bit more detail of this, because I know this is quite a focus of this committee. So the site plan approval variations under package B are focus on certain items. I should first explain that some of the existing flexibility that's currently in the downtown plan is incorporated into the proposed land use bylaw regulations, like built into the as-of-right requirements for things like to accommodate things like sloping conditions or different lot configurations, or different requirements for different uses. For example, a cultural use like a museum or a theater, isn't expected to meet the same articulation requirements as storefronts, for example, and that can be built in, again, kind of codified right into the land use bylaw. So with so the site plan approval tool, instead of it being used for kind of these codified requirements, it's proposed to be used for the variations that are focused on building design items that require some sort of discretionary decisions and can benefit from public and community advice. So the proposed site plan variations options proposed under the land use bylaw on package B include roof edge setbacks for height exempted features. So if there is a need to place an elevator enclosure close to the edge of a building some rationale needs to be provided and needs to provide to be buffered in a certain sort of way. So not necessarily a one size fits all approach for that feature. enabling street wall articulations to be supported in a different way. So if the prescriptive requirements don't make sense for a certain proposal, but the street wall can still be animated in a different way, that could be considered through site plan approval. Different approaches to grade-oriented premises. So there are limits on how wide storefronts can be under the proposed package B, and but recognizing there could be some needs for larger storefronts. The site plan approval tool could be used to consider larger scale commercial uses, again provided that the impacts on the public realm, that it's still animated in a different way, that it still provides as much activity as if it was multiple storefronts. There's also an ability to use a site plan approval to get permission to build maximum building dimensions, although I don't know if that really applies to the downtown Halifax area where the ground, at least the street wall portion of the buildings, I don't believe there are limits on dimensions, and the tower portions aren't included, so there is not an ability to vary the tower portions of the building. There's also a variation option for the form and design of institutional community facility buildings, recognizing that things like places of worships or museums may intentionally want to think outside the box in terms of things like street walls and the placement of doors and other features. And so there's some flexibility through the site plan approval process to consider different designs for those types of uses, and also site plan variation related to heritage design to adjust potential conflicts between heritage requirements under the Heritage Property Act and the Land Use Bylaw. And I think probably the main change for proposals that maybe you've been considering through this committee is under package B. There's a limited ability to vary some of the built form controls, things like setbacks and the dimensions of towers. In terms of built form, the downtown Halifax zone proposed in package B very much builds on the existing controls in the downtown Halifax plan. Contains most of the regulations in terms of things like street walls and mid-rise portion and tower portions. Some of the maximum building dimensions and setbacks, for example. There are some changes to align with the center plan built form requirements, so that to match some of the other controls in the centers and other zones found at the regional center, which include allowing rooftop greenhouses and solar collectors to exceed the maximum building height, so they could be built on top of a building even if it's already at the maximum building height. So that's intended to provide a bit more flexibility for those features, I guess, to remove barriers for those. The ground-oriented premises on pedestrian-oriented commercial streets are also aligned with the center plan framework, as are projections, overhangs, and cantilevers. There's slightly different lower maximum street wall heights in some precincts. I believe the downtown Halifax plan allows for up to 21.5 meters in some areas, and the proposed downtown Halifax zone, I think the maximum that's applied, in some street is 18.5 meters, so a slight reduction in some areas. I'll note that pedways are proposed to be prohibited. This is because of the concerns about, I guess, taking away from the street activity and it focused on the pedestrian-oriented design that can be experienced in other cities that have a lot of them, I think. And also the interior lot line setbacks for mid-rise portions of the buildings. I think currently there's a bit of a formula depending on the size of the lot, whereas package B is proposing a straightforward number that applies in all situations. I believe it's 5.5 meters. Proposed downtown Halifax zone also builds on the current downtown plan in terms of the different precincts and that guide, the kind of detailed land use controls around street walls and other kind of fine-tuned controls. Some of the new ones include a precinct for the Cogswell lands to guide future more detailed planning in the area, the North End Gateway and Scotia Square complex, and the Portage Wharf area. The proposed downtown Halifax zone also carries forward many of the downtown Halifax special areas, including the downtown Halifax central blocks. So these are some of the specific built form controls about the historic block pattern continuous street wall. The Halifax waterfront special area as well. And I will note that that the package B does propose a little bit more flexibility in that waterfront area in response to develop Nova Scotia requests, things like allowing a bit more flexibility for kiosks, for example. The lower central downtown Halifax special area also carry forward, as are the Nova Centre special regulations for the convention center. Two of the existing ones carried forward would be the South Park Street and the Spring Garden Road. Some of the specific regulations about ensuring adequate sunlight penetration. I mentioned the new precinct, and there's also a special area related to the Scotia Square complex. And this is to recognize the unique scale and size of that building and the grade changes on the site. And also the Cogswell Lands special area, which would enable the downtown Halifax zone to be applied to the Cogswell interchange upon the completion of the road network, so that we're not kind of left with no zoning on the lands if once that road is closed. And as I mentioned, some detailed a subsequent policy exercise and consultations are planned to develop detailed special regulations around street walls and building size and building heights for the Cogswell lands after package B is completed. As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of new proposed pedestrian-oriented commercial streets. So under the current downtown plan, it's Spring Garden Road and Barrington Street would be maintained under the remaining downtown plan. And there are several additional streets proposed: the South Street, Grafton Street, Argyle Street, Carmichael Street, Duke Street, Granville Street, and Lower Water Street. And I believe that should be South Park Street on the top. Pedestrian-oriented commercial streets are ones that are identified in the plan in line with bylaw, where ground floor commercial is required, not just permitted, and also kind of limited to more active type uses, so shop services, restaurants, I think things like that. And that's intended to support that kind of pedestrian-oriented experience, and especially in a downtown setting. Okay, that's downtown Halifax, and I'll quickly touch on some of the designations that also apply in the downtown Halifax area, and just touch on some of the designations also covered in package B, just to provide context for the committee. But again, the focus would be on the downtown Halifax designation. So one designation I'll briefly mention is the parking community facility designation, and it's applied to parks and open spaces and is intended to support a connected park and open space network. And the zone that would be relevant to the downtown Halifax area would be the park and community facility zone, which is applied to public and community parks and community facilities and open space settings. So this zone would be applied to the public park by the ferry, and other sites in downtown Halifax area. The other designation with some relevance to the downtown area would be the institutional employment designation. It's applied to large-scale institutions like Dalhousie University and community colleges and hospitals and Department of National Defense, and also small-scale institutions like places of worships and community centers. And it's intended to support the use and expansion of these institutions in the regional center. The two zones that would be relevant to the downtown Halifax area would be the institutional zone, which is applied to some of the smaller scale institutional uses located downtown. So that a couple of some of the churches, and also the University and College 2 zone and University and College 1 zone, which is applied to the Sexton campus. So the University and College 1 zone, it supports more of a kind of open space campus setting. So that would be applied to the open space part of the Sexton campus, where the University College 2 zone supports more of a very urban form. So very much aligns more with the downtown Halifax built form controls, and it's applied to a portion of the Sexton campus that's intended to be developed fairly intensely. Again, just to touch on some of the other designations in package B that aren't really applicable to the downtown Halifax plan area, but just to give committee members a full picture of what's included in package B. One of the kind of most important parts of package B would be the established residential designation. It's applied to predominantly low-rise residential areas, so that's quite a big portion of the regional center. And it's intended to retain the scale of existing low-density residential neighborhoods while providing opportunities for more housing options. The industrial employment designation, also another important one, applied to a lot of harbor-related industrial along the waterfront, like the Portlands, and also business parks like Woodside Industrial Park. And it's intended to support industrial, limited to commercial, and harbor-related industries. Last designation I'll quickly touch on is the water access designation, and it's applied to pre-Confederation water lots located in the northwest arm, and also Lake Winnook and a portion of Lake Bigmac in the central plan area. And it's intended to, well, it recognizes that these water lots can be infilled if approval is given by the federal or provincial governments, depending on where they're located. Municipality can control, doesn't have a, I guess, a say in whether the lots are infilled, but once it is filled, it is subject to our zoning. So this is why designation is applied, and intentionally limits the use of that land after it's infilled to kind of more of a parks and recreation types uses to kind of de-incentivize the infilling of land. And I will note it does not apply to water lots located in Halifax Harbor. Those water lots would take on the adjacent zoning, given that the Halifax Harbor is a working harbor, and that the downtown Halifax zone would be an appropriate expansion into those water lots, and also owned by, but generally owned by government, by Develop Nova Scotia. I'll quickly touch on some COVID-19 consideration. This is something you often get asked about, given that package A was approved before the pandemic, and this planning process has been going on through it, and of course the context of Halifax or Nova Scotia, or in fact the world has changed, and it still remains to be seen how the nature of downtowns are going to evolve going forward. But it is something that myself and the team has put quite a bit of thought on, so I think it'd be worthwhile just to touch on some of the aspects that are relevant to the downtown Halifax area. As I mentioned, complete communities is a kind of key core concept of the central planning framework. And I think that's been shown to be so important through the pandemic. The importance of having access to food and services, and especially open spaces, has been shown to be so important. And that's a core concept of the central plan, and that certainly applies to the downtown Halifax area, where there are open spaces and parks and services. That kind of mixed use framework is very much supported by the zoning proposed for downtown Halifax. Also, I think it's kind of highlights the importance of flexible land use controls. Again, it really highlighted in the downtown Halifax zone, where an office building can convert for residential use without going through a rezoning process. I know there are costs, of course, to renovation, but that flexible mixed use land use controls kind of can support that evolution, depending on market conditions, where a residential or commercial use could make sense, depending on especially the nature of community and downtowns going forward. We did put some attention on the pedestrian-oriented commercial streets, and did adjust the regulations to allow office uses outside of downtown designations. So these pedestrian-oriented commercial streets are also identified in places like Quinpool Road and other locations. We didn't feel it was appropriate for the downtown designation because of the focus on animating the streets there, and that in a downtown context that do have large offices, that the office uses on the ground floor could make them a little bit more stale, but certainly open to some comments and questions on this from the committee. And the last two aspects I will note is through the central plan framework, we are proposing to further streamline the development review process, and this could help bring some development projects to the market a little bit faster, especially for housing, that we're seeing such a demand for housing. And also through package B, proposing to increase the transition time frame for existing development agreements, recognizing that private developers also facing many challenges due to the pandemic. I'll also touch on site plan approval transition, and I don't know if committee members have been receiving correspondence on this as well. Under the previous draft of package B, published over a year ago, is January 2020. Staff have been proposing that the site plan approval would transition like development agreements. That if we had the thinking was if we had a application in under the current plan, then in good faith, we would continue on under the old plan even after package B was approved. We learned through our last review process that isn't in fact supported by the HM charter because it's an as a right process, not a discretionary process. And for package A areas, so for some of the centers and corridors, it's expected to have limited impacts given that the requirements are generally similar and aren't or if anything are tended to be more streamlined or less prescriptive. However, we will note that we are working with applicants in the downtown Halifax plan area to assess impacts because of because there are some significant changes. Most notably, the bonus zoning framework is different. There's under the proposed package B, there's a bit more there's a fewer options for on-site to meet the bonus zoning requirements with on-site developments. And also, as I previously mentioned, some of the site plan variations are different as well. Whereas under current downtown plan, the applicants can ask to vary some of the built form controls, like the tower size and setbacks. Under package B, these site plan barriers aren't proposed to be carried forward. So we are working with applicants to assess impacts and to assess options, and it's one of the reasons why some of the some applicants are getting the move on and coming to the committee in the coming months. So I mentioned the bylaw simplification framework program at the start, and part of that is approving new plans, but also dealing with amending and repealing old plans. So this includes repealing package A, and what I'll note is highlighted at the bottom of the screen is the amendments to the downtown Halifax plan. So what's being proposed is that the downtown Halifax plan would be continue to exist for the heritage conservation districts, but the other parts of the plan would be essentially cut out, and instead this package B planning framework in the downtown Halifax zone would apply. And in terms of governance, again, I'll focus on this committee. This would mean the continuation of the design review committee for the remaining portions of the downtown plan. So following package B, the committee's role would be focused on the heritage conservation districts until those areas are considered and incorporated into the central plan framework through the downtown Halifax heritage conservation district work. Wrapping up my overview, I'll touch on the overall package B review and adoption process. As you can see on the screen, we're kind of working our way through various committees right now. We're at the Heritage Advisory Committee last night, and they're going to discussing this again in a couple of weeks. And we're going to the Community Design Advisory Committee as well. We have been to the Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council and anticipate going through the other committees on the screen, the Halifax and West Regional Center Community Council, in the coming weeks and months. And of course, we're at the Design Review Committee here today. We're expecting a number of different recommendations from this committee to all come together in a supplementary report to Regional Council for discussion at the committee of the whole, targeted for August of this year, and are currently tentatively targeting a public hearing for September, or for late September or early October of this fall. Okay, thanks for the chance to provide an overview. I'll end my presentation by putting the recommendations on the screen. As mentioned, the scope of this committee is focused on the downtown Halifax plan, so that's why you'll see that the recommendations are really focused on the proposed amendments to the downtown Halifax plan, which is the carve out the section that's proposed to be covered by the center plan package B, so encourage committee members to kind of focus on the downtown Halifax portion of the package B. What is in terms of what is being replaced with what is proposed to replace in the existing downtown Halifax with a proposed zoning. So questions and comments on that portion of the plan are certainly welcome. And with that, I certainly thank you for the time and attention, and I would be happy to answer any questions. And I will stop sharing my screen and pass it back to the chair, Erica Armstrong.
Hi, Ben. Maybe if you want to leave your screen shared and just go back to the motions that you've put on the floor, just so we have that in front of us as we discuss.
Sure. Thank you. Chair. I can do that. I know it's in the report as well, but I can put that on the screen again if it's helpful.
Yeah, we tend to look at it a lot, so we'll just leave it up. But if we want to take it down, we can, but we'll just leave it up for now.
Actually, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Because of our requirement to actually have the viewing of the meeting, I will copy and paste the motion and put it in the meeting chat for reference.
Perfect. Also, if you can hear my 1-year-old screaming in the background, I apologize. All right, so we're now going to go through questions. So I'll just do a roll call and ask questions. I'll say your name, and then you can go ahead and put questions forward to Ben or any other members of staff. And then we'll do like a follow-up round if we have any questions after those group of questions. So I'll start with Julian. I don't know if he came online. He did. So any questions from Julian? All right, Nathan?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I was kind of curious, maybe I didn't catch the reasoning, is it seemed that there was a push to not have pedways moving forward. Is that something, did I miss the reasoning why that was, or maybe Ben, that's a question for Ben?
Thanks for the question, and through to Chair. You certainly did pick up on that, and thanks for the opportunity to clarify. So yes, that's one of the proposed changes that was highlighting in terms of what's the difference with the proposed downtown Halifax zone, and one of them is a proposal to prohibit pedways. So I think we recognize that there are both positive and negatives with pedways. There's a convenience aspect to it, but on the balance of kind of the pros and cons, staff are recommending that they not be allowed going forward, and that's because of the negative impacts they can have on the activity on the street. So it's certainly it's convenient to go from block to block through a pedway, but it also means that people are walking on the active streets where we want to have activity and shops and services and that kind of animated street fronts. And I think we're trying to learn from the experience of some other larger cities. Minneapolis comes to mind that have an extensive pedway record where they're having discussions about tearing them down because they have made the streets just the extreme is kind of a dead streetscape on the ground floor. We're certainly not there, but that's the reasoning for proposing to be prohibited. The only caveat I will note is that with the Cogswell area, that might need to be visited for that area because it is right adjacent to an existing kind of pedway network, and there might be a rationale for allowing it in that area.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that explanation. It makes a lot of sense.
Jess?
Thanks, Erica. My main thing is I've been trying to wrap my head around, and I know this is probably going to be a thing that staff are going to have to figure out going forward, is how, this whole transition of applications that are now going on when package B is adopted and all of that kind of thing. So like, for example, the first one that Carl mentioned that could be coming forward first, like the Barrington Street one, that right now is going under like the DRC, the downtown plan, site plan approval thing. So once that comes, let's just say that comes next month to the DRC for approval or refusal. If that is approved by the DRC, does that mean they're done? Like they don't have to go and do anything further? Or once package B comes in, will that like affect them? Or do you guys even know that yet? Or is that still kind of being worked out?
Thanks for the question. Yes, it's a confusing one, and I'm happy to try to clarify again through the chair, Megan Armstrong. So I'll use a different example because the Barrington Street one would actually be continuing on because it's part of the Heritage Conservation District. So it would continue on the old plan, but some of the other sites certainly would have potential issues. So to be grandfathered in, it takes more than just having a site plan approval. You actually need to have construction permits. So that's consistent with the kind of as-right permitting process. If somebody's looking to build a shed in their backyard, having a development permit is enough. You need to have a construction permit in hand for it to be grandfathered under the old rules. So while earlier drafts thought we could transition site plan approvals like development agreement, it turns out that's really actually not supported under the Halifax Charter. So what we're working with applicants is to be able to kind of do a side-by-side comparison of this is what you can do under the downtown Halifax plan, and what does this mean under package B? Does the building design actually need to change, or is it actually still supported under the plan? Are there actually any concerns about that? So we're kind of working to understand, you know, is there actually a concern there? Or if so, how significant is it? And the thing that we're exploring at the staff level, because this is something we had to work with applicants with, we couldn't do before this last release, is kind of policy options for it. So we know we can't just have a transition policy. One of the options we're looking at is, it's a messy option, but it's actually kind of more of a Swiss cheese approach, because the downtown Halifax plan is going to live on for the heritage conservation districts. You technically could poke holes in the downtown Halifax zone and still have the downtown Halifax apply to a limited number of sites, just to enable those projects to get to the construction phase before the whole downtown Halifax plan is folded into the center plan framework. So I mean, I don't think any decisions have been made in this, and we're expecting to report to the regional council about this. But if this committee members have any comments or about that, then I think that would be appropriate.
No, that makes sense. I figured it was, it's not an easy process trying to figure out, because you can't just stop applications from coming in while we're doing all this. Okay, no, that makes sense. So there's potential that people could have, there's potential that the downtown plan area is being amended right now could change and have further policies in it, depending on all these conversations going on with applicants right now. Okay, no, that's great. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Jan?
Thanks, Erica. This might be just a continuation of that question, because I'm struggling here as well. So I can understand how the application expected at the July meeting falls under the Barrington and Old South. So that would be considered in the usual way, or in the way we have under the downtown Halifax secondary municipal planning strategy. So, but at the other two, well, thinking of the one on Spring Garden. So we'll be using the new guidelines under package B to review that?
Yeah. Thanks for the question, opportunity to clarify again through the chair. The short answer is no.
Okay.
Until right now, package B is just proposed, right? It's a draft. Staff, we've made our best recommendations, but I mean, this committee and a variety of other committees are weighing in, making recommendations, and it's not, it has no effect until council approves it, and then actually the province actually needs to review it as well. So it's a number of months until anything I was talking, any new things I was talking about actually come into effect. So until that time, the downtown Halifax plan is the law of land, I guess, in the downtown Halifax area. So you'd be continued to consider under those plans. And I think the thing that we're trying to watch for and trying to mitigate against is those projects that are going under the current downtown plans, working on the site plan approvals in good faith and doing all the consultations and studies, but they may be challenged to be able to get to the construction permits, because in addition to the site plan approval, they need also actually apply construction drawings, and those take time as well. So that once they have construction drawings, then council package B is approved, then it's grandfathered in. But if they just get a site plan approval and don't get that construction permit, then they essentially need to start. They would have to start again under the package B framework. So that's the situation, and it's a bit of a timing issue. and also that the requirements are, I wouldn't say a whole lot different, but slightly different between the downtown plan and the proposed package B. And I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I have another question about the site plan approval transition, the zoning framework, and how the difference is there. Could you speak to that a little bit in a little more detail? The difference. Yeah,
absolutely. I think thanks for the question again through the chair. Yeah, I did touch on that briefly, but it is a bit more detail to that. So, first thing I'd going to kind of highlight is the whole bonus zoning tool really came to fruition through the downtown Halifax plan. So they were the first. It was the first part of in Halifax where we used the tool and really led the way with the use of kind of a bonus zoning approach. Package A kind of built on that work, and there was quite a lot of study and debate and discussion at council, and refined that tool to instead of focusing on height, focus on floor area, and also based on a lot of good study, kind of reined in or reduced the number of categories. With the understanding that the fewer number of categories, the more tangible benefits you get. Whereas if you spread it out over multiple categories, you really don't get the benefits. So, so there's a fewer number of categories, with affordable housing being the most important one, where 60% has to be collected in money in lieu, except for heritage sites, heritage preservation on site, community and cultural uses. Again, that would be money in lieu. Public art, which could be on site or money in lieu. I lost track. I think I'm missing one. Parks, sorry, contribution for parks and recreation. Again, that would be money in lieu, not in terms of land. So I think that the main difference between the existing downtown Halifax plan and proposed package B is the fewer number of categories. That's intentional, and also I think the value of the bonus zoning is also increased to align more with the best practices in other cities. Whereas existing downtown Halifax plan, it was the first step in that direction. Took a very light approach. It wasn't actually. It isn't that much. The values don't actually work out to be that much. Through package A, the values were increased to what we think is the kind of sweet spot between enabling more development, but also getting enough tangible benefits to mitigate the impacts of development on the surrounding community.
Okay.
So hopefully that clarifies it in more detail.
Yes, I'm going to ask a very basic question. I hope it doesn't sound ignorant, but but public benefits will be required of developers who have projects over a certain size. Is that particularly in relation to affordable housing? Correct?
Yes,
it's
that's
not
right.
A sort of a provision of public benefit in order to have a requirement relaxed.
Yes, thanks for question. I was going to see if I can just try to think about a clear way of describing this, and again through the chair. We refer to as public benefits, and it is a relaxation of the kind of a limit of 2,000 square meters. So it's if the bonus zoning is applied, then a developer can build more than 2,000 square meters.
Okay.
And the affordable housing component, we did explore on-site, but it is targeted for money in lieu to be used by the municipality to support nonprofit housing. It could be near the site of development, but it could be anywhere in the regional center. So it's kind of that exchange. Okay, you can build a higher density building, but provided a contribution to the broader community in some way, primarily affordable housing towards an affordable housing fund. But I kind of mentioned a number of different categories.
I guess what I'm getting at is, was there ever any conversation about requiring an applicant under package B, under the development package B, and requiring an applicant, a developer, to provide a contribution in lieu for affordable housing without a variance?
Thanks for the question again through chair. That it's I should clarify, it's not tied to the site plan variation tool.
Okay.
It's kind of more simply, if you want to build over 2,000 square meters of building area in particular zones, you need to provide bonus zoning.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a formula that once you're above that size of a building, there's a formula applied to the amount over that size, and it's
Okay.
and that value of bonus zoning needs to be provided. So it's not tied to the site plan approval tool. It's a different type of tool.
Okay, all right, thank you. I appreciate all that explanation, and thank you,
No, thanks.
Madam Chair.
Thanks, Jan. Sarah?
No questions for me.
Brent? All right, I don't think he joined. Marilee?
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Ben, for the presentation. That's obviously a lot of information that you and your team have put together, so appreciate it. My question is related to the institutional zoning. You'd mentioned a couple times how it applies to Dalhousie and to some of the community colleges. And the references that you made implied the campus style, you know, the NSCC and the larger campuses. Does that zoning apply to smaller institutions? I'm thinking like NASCAD in the downtown, where they don't really have a campus. They're more spread out in specific locations through the downtown core. And how does that impact those particular sites?
Thanks for the question. Again, through Chair, it's a good one to clarify. So I will point out that institutional uses like college unions are also permitted in the downtown zone. So it's not as though they have to be placed in the institutional zone. So the NSC campus by closer to the ferry terminal site would just still be in the downtown zone and permitted under the downtown framework. Where the institutional zones are applied are to those, I guess I'll describe those clearly kind of institutional buildings. So the Halifax Public Library, the places of worship, and the Sexton, the Housley Sexton campus. And the two zones I think you're picking up on that we called UC1 and UC2 is the UC1 is kind of has more of an open space requirements. It doesn't allow, like, maximum lot coverage is 60%. So it requires, you know, it's applied to like the Dalhousie main campus, St. Mary's campus, and the NSCC campuses where you expect and you want to preserve that kind of open space feel. Kind of more unique to part of downtown of the downtown campus and also the Carlson campus up the road is this UC2 zone, which supports the same kind of urban form as the downtown Halifax zone, but is kind of more appropriate for the institutional uses. So we did think about just including a portion of Sexton campus, for example, into the downtown Halifax zone, but then that comes with other kind of urban design controls that don't make sense for a university, like things like ground floor commercial and articulation, which doesn't always make sense for kind of institutional buildings. So that's why they can reestablish this UC2 zone and applied it to a portion of that Sexton campus right along Queen Street. It would be the place right behind the Halifax Public Library would be where that zone's applied. And I mentioned the institutional zone, which is again kind of a bit more flexible for the institutional use. It doesn't quite have the same amount of design controls, given that it don't actually, it doesn't actually, you know, you can't, it purposely don't articulate, you know, every 8 meters like you would expect for an office or a residential building. And that's why some of the smaller institutional uses scattered in downtown Halifax are also placed in that zone. But certainly not applied to every institutional use, which is also, you know, downtown Halifax zone permits everything, right? Permits all sorts of commercial uses and residential uses, and including institutional uses, you know, in any of those mixed use buildings.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. I don't, Marcel sent his regrets, and I don't think Christine has joined from what I can see. My questions are more just, I was trying to make sure that I understand everything. I'm the lay person on the committee, and it's more focused on the process. So once package B is adopted, only heritage site applications would come to DRC. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes. You know, assuming I guess regional council approves it as currently drafted, that would be the case. Yeah.
And then another slide that you had was the site plan approval variations, and it kind of listed that you guys have made it easier for the site plan approval process to work through variations at that level. So it'd be less likely that we're seeing, say, street wall variances coming to us, because if a package B was approved the way it is now, those could be dealt with at that level. Am I correct in saying that?
Somewhat, I guess I should clarify that. Under package A, the current site plan applications are going to similar but different committee. You may have heard of the Design Advisory Committee, a similar name, but a little bit of a different mandate. So in that case, the committee's reviewing and providing advice to the development officer. So when I spoke to the site plan variations that are proposed under package B, those would go to a different committee. So I think because of the heritage conservation districts kind of living on for a little while longer, there will be a bit of a year or two transition phase where this committee would continue to look at the remaining portions of the downtown Halifax plan, and the Design Advisory Committee, which is a different committee, would continue to provide advice on the site plan variations, and that committee would weigh into potential projects that might be located in downtown Halifax but outside of those HCDs. So
okay, so we're basically approval of package B. The only thing that's coming to us is heritage districts until that gets absorbed into the center plan. Okay, got it. And then just to go back on the pedways, Cogswell might be able to hook into the pedway network because its zoning is being left outside of the what's going forward in package B.
Yes, almost. I think you got it.
I'm sorry,
So,
I don't have the best language around these things.
No. I think you basically have it. I think the promoting indicating the outside pedways are proposed to be permitted, and what I'm acknowledging that there's another policy project work on our horizon for the Cogswell area to truly incorporate that into the kind of downtown framework and the fine-grained regulations around street walls and building height. And kind of acknowledging that through that process that we expect to revisit the pedway question for that particular area.
Yeah, because
so
I guess
the decision right now for regional council would be pedways in downtown Halifax, and acknowledging that we'll need to look at that again for the Cogswell area.
Okay, good. Because yeah, my fear is that if we say no pedways at all, and that particular site with so many D&D employees in the wintertime, we want to draw them to activate the streets during the winter. And if that pedway maybe isn't there that hooks into the rest of the system, you aren't going to get as much winter activation and people coming to shop and eat lunch from D&D if they have to go outside. So that's all my thoughts. So any questions arising out of the group's questions, I'll just let you unmute your mic and kind of say I have a question instead of doing roll call again. So if you have.
Did the sound just go out, Erica?
I think, Erica, you may have accidentally muted yourself.
Yeah, I think so.
I muted myself. I don't know how I would have done that, but it's possible. I don't know what maybe got missed. I was just saying, you can ask any more questions that arose out of the questions that just came through.
I actually had a question out of the questions. So what led to the decision of D&D being comparable in its structures and needs to universities? It doesn't really make sense to me that both of those would be comparable.
Yes, through the chair, definitely a fair observation there. I think why they're grouped together and they're what we call the institutional employment designation is just that they're an institutional, they're a public entity, and they provide employment, but certainly don't have the same zoning. Under that designation, there's 5 different zones. So there's specific zoning for university colleges that are quite detailed, and to be honest about the Department of National Defense and also the hospital zone, Those are lands owned by the federal government or the provincial government. They don't come to the municipality for permits, and they don't necessarily have to follow municipal rules. So we apply zoning just to fill the holes on our planning framework and to establish some kind of basic controls or the things that we think are important, things like building height and setbacks, but really are pretty light on details, recognizing that to be honest, the Department of National Defense will do what they feel they need to do on their site to make efficient use of the land. So they only group together in institutional employment from the very high level policy kind of consideration that they're a type of institution and provide employment.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Jan, go ahead.
Thanks, Erica. And just a question to sort of build, and I don't mean to be pushing this to the bitter end, but and I understand that all of this will take time, and I think it's an extremely exciting process and makes a lot of sense. The streamlining of the policies and the planning and the vision and the concepts are right on. So it's congratulations to everyone. Operationally, then, I understand that the DRC will continue to review applications that are in the heritage zone, even after package B, assuming package B is passed by council and goes into effect. But eventually then the plan would be for those two heritage zones to be wrapped into the center plan as well, correct? I mean, it wouldn't make sense to go on for a long, long time having this one little heritage zone dealt with in a different way. So that's the ultimate plan. So then, assuming that all comes to play, then would this other committee, the design advisory committee, be playing the role of the DRC for the entire center region?
Yes, through the chair, I believe you're on point. So the downtown Halifax plan and this committee will continue on for its heritage conservation districts until the heritage work can catch up and kind of go through a bit of a unique process through the Heritage Property Act to really integrate the whole downtown Halifax area into the center plan framework. And under the current draft, it's the Design Advisory Committee, whose role is expanding to include, I guess, all of Package B areas, including portions of downtown Halifax, or except for those heritage conservation districts. And then the intentions in the not so distant future is to pull the rest, pull it all into one framework. So we have one committee providing advice on design and urban design, and instead of two.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Committee's understanding, that committee doesn't operate in the same type of fashion the way we are. That's correct. It's advisory. There isn't a correct, like we don't have the same, I can't think of the word. Like our committee is the only one out of all of the committees right now that has like the power to do this particular thing.
The only decision-making authority committee.
Yeah.
Yes. So Ben or Sarah, do you want to clarify so that this committee just has an understanding of how the Design Advisory Committee's role will play out when Center Package B is accepted?
Ben can probably speak to it in more detail, but anecdotally right now, the Design Advisory Committee, like Erica mentioned, is advisory. So we're given the set of guidelines through the center plan. And once a proposal is in a certain category, it goes to the Design Advisory just by, it's mandated to do so. And so we provide advice or consideration and how it pertains to the requirements that are in the center plan as it stands now. Does that make sense? So we don't have any, let's say there's no teeth to the committee because it's advisory, but that's all of the other committees, so are in the same category. And also, sorry, one last thing. I think from my understanding, the intention of that is that there's been so much engagement and advising around center plan in and of itself. The developments that don't completely fit the mold or that are in a certain category. So usually if there are really tall buildings or really big buildings, then it'll go to design advisory. But it's trying to reduce the number of proposals that go to all of these different committees.
In these abilities in package B to work through variations easier than our current land use bylaws, that's what helps the process work better with having the design advisory committee not having the same abilities as this committee, correct?
Well, there's been so much consultation on the central plan framework, about heights and some of these key details. Regional council has been looking to kind of streamline their process and kind of make these hard decisions once instead of having to revisit it and again with the communities and kind of how rehash old debates. So it's part of the kind of the streamlining of the approval process and kind of recognizing, hey, we've had these discussions, we've had these debates, all the thread of the evolution of it, where HRM by design, the downtown plan, moved from the complex development agreement process, which is very long and cumbersome, to a site plan approval process with a lot of variations that are fairly wide open. Package A kind of further streamlined it to those design controls and streamline it. And package B, we're proposing to go a little bit further and to really focus on those variations, like kind of the exceptions where the proposer is looking to do something different. That's where some input from the design advisory committee and the public is warranted, instead of proposal that just kind of meet a black and white, either you do or you don't meet it kind of requirement. If I have an understanding the way I do as well.
Jan.
And not to push this too far, but since this other committee, the DAC, won't have the decision-making authority, where will the ultimate decision as to whether to approve be made? Where does the rubber hit the road? Who makes that?
And it's only if they have a variance, you mean, right, Jan? Like if they have from outside what's accepted.
Yeah, if they meet if it's ticking all the boxes and so on, then I guess the issue. But if it doesn't, what body makes that decision?
Yeah. Thanks for the question and to the share. Need to be appointed by regional council, and are subject to the ones that have to interpret the bylaws and make these decisions. And when it comes to site plan variations or indeed kind of what we call standard variances, like the under any land use bylaw, people can apply to approve only certain parts of it, though their decisions can be appealed to, in this case, the regional center community council. So I guess the buck stops with the development officers, but if their decisions can be a decision like they were a development officer, and it's not intended to be a wide open, they could decide whatever they want. It's they could make it the same decisions as if they could as a certain development officer. I guess I would add that permit applications can be appealed by applicants to utility and things can often escalate through the system, but the development officers and council would be the main decision makers in this case.
Can I ask a question, Jan, on this note, if I interrupt for a sec? So I just want to understand how it goes. So the final vote, so we've seen a lot of things get appealed, go to council. Is there a plan package B, what is the vote that council, is there a percentage? Is it 50% of council then votes yes, it's approved, or is there a higher margin? What's the like vote total?
Thanks for the question. I believe it's just a majority vote. So regional center community council is 5 councillors, so 3 out of 5 would need to vote in certain direction to have some force.
Okay, so it doesn't go to full council, it just goes to that.
That's right. That was a decision of council in establishing the regional center community council, because that community council didn't exist up until a year and a half ago, and community council is to deal with potential appeals to site plan approval.
So 3 people and the decision is made.
Potentially, and I would just add that the under the HRM charter, it's appeal a development officer decision, and the community council are kind of limited to making decisions like they were a development officer, so they have to still consider the same rule book and make a decision about the development officer. So that's the nature of our decision making processes in the local government level.
Okay, I'll stop now.
Erica, just maybe there will be more time for discussion after, but just as a point, I was surprised by that, but then I also thought about how potentially councillors that do not engage in the downtown core or where the center plan actually affects would have an equal say to the councillors who are actually in those spaces and engaging with those people and their needs. So yes, there's only 3. Yes, there's only 3, but also it's harder to think about how, a councillor in a very rural setting, HRM's huge, like think about Musquodoboit Harbor area versus downtown. So, but I share your concerns for other reasons. So, yeah.
It's just, it's a big change. It's a complicated change. So I was just trying to work it all out in my mind. But do I have a better suggestion of how it should work? I do not. Jan?
Oh, yeah, and this is just an additional comment, I guess add a little bit more concern, because with the new center plan, I think it sounds like it has a lot of potential to streamline and to make the approval process easier and more in line with HRM's priorities and so on. So that's all a good thing. But it does also sound to me like the proposals that will be more contentious are the ones that do fall out, as you had said in the that don't necessarily meet all the requirements, but where there may be some need for discretion or a sort of special building and so on, where I would have thought that having input from a larger community-based group and having some, and like Erica too, I don't know. And it does sound like all of this will happen in good time. And the sounds like it's overdue. So thank you for your presentation. That's all. I'm rambling.
Anything that comes up going forward in these discussions as it goes to other committees, maybe there'll be points that they'll be building on that were similar to voice your final thoughts, and then we'll move to the motion. And I'm a little rusty, so I might need Andrea to get me through this, but any final comments on the city? So it's much appreciated. It's been since March. Should I or somebody read the motion?
Whoever will, Madam Chair, if a member of the committee could move the motion.
Okay,
And
let's start with that. So if somebody could move the motion to the floor, and we'll read it.
And Madam Chair, for the committee, the motion is in the chat.
And is it both items that are in the chat, number 1 and 2? Or?
The motion includes both recommendations.
I can motion it then. So I motion that the Design Review Committee proposed amendments to the Downtown Halifax Secondary Municipal Planning Strategy and the Downtown Halifax Land Use Bylaw as set out in attachments E and F of the staff report dated May. Proposed amendments to the Downtown Halifax Secondary Municipal Planning Strategy and the Downtown Halifax Land Use Bylaw as set out in attachments E and F of the staff report.
All right. So we don't need to second it yet, right? Now we debate.
I would say second it, and then there can be debate.
Okay, so can I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second.
Sarah seconds. Any debate? And I mean, the advice can be general or specific. I feel it's pretty obvious out of this discussion that maybe some of the general type advice that we would give is to have further consideration around the appeals process or the voting process. Sarah?
I think just generally speaking, and I don't really know how to voice this one way or another, so I'm just gonna, from my experience, share. But with the development of the DAC, it has been, to a certain point, a little frustrating to not have what I was saying before, kind of like teeth in the committee. And I understand why there isn't, because that's very difficult from a legislative perspective. But I think that there is a place for it in some circumstances. And I think to really think about the eventual dissolution of some committees and the creation of other committees at the same time, just to really be mindful of how they're going to interact with one another and how it's going to move forward and what the kind of like perfect solution is, which is unattainable. But, you know, if we can get as close to it as possible in terms of public engagement, I'm really mindful and really appreciative that we need to streamline the process, but I think public accountability is also very important. So how do you balance that? And what I do fear, having a development officer be the be all end all, which is totally fine. But you do run the risk of just, you know, human error or one person's interpretation and then three other people's interpretation of a policy. Yeah, so I guess just like, I don't think it has to be in the motion, but generally speaking, I think obviously the package has been, it's taken years to develop. It's an excellent package, but just around the process piece, I think it's probably a good place here to put it in the minutes that might be something for staff to consider and for council to consider. Really, it's council's choice in terms of the governance of the policy and the center plan. So
thanks, Sarah. You much more eloquently put what I'm trying to get at. So any other thoughts, general or specific advice before we move the motion or approve the motion? Okay, so I'll now call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying yay. Any contrary minded, say nay.
yay.
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 All right, so I think that's everything, Andrea, that we have on the agenda. I thought of an item while we were going through. Marilee may not want to hear this one, but we had kind of talked about a possible transition, but we did go a long time without having a meeting. So I totally get that maybe it's not the right time. Maybe we do one more the Barrington one since it's coming, and then there's two more after that. So I just wanted to know, Andrea, where we should flesh out and kind of discuss that, like because I know we're not supposed to communicate via email really on any committee business. So I'm just putting it out there as to when is the right time and how do we kind of broach that.
Do the transition.
Mhm.
I would say that just, indicate, so what would need to happen, Madam Chair, is if you decide that you no longer wish to continue as chair of the committee, that you would need to basically send me an email resigning as chair. And then at the next regular meeting after that, we would have to have an election for chair.
Okay.
And vice chair.
Okay.
To
So
replace Marilee.
our next meeting will be July 8th or July 15th. Sorry.
It's July 8th.
July
Let me just
8th.
double check, but I'm pretty sure it's July 8th because it's the second Tuesday.
It is, yeah.
Yes. So yes, the next meeting is July 8th.
So Marilee, do you feel comfortable with, I feel fine running as chair for the next meeting if you'd like, but if you feel comfortable making that transition for that meeting, then I can email and step down for that meeting, whatever you feel comfortable with.
I think as long as the meeting is able to attend that one. So that would be the only, so as long as it sticks to the 8th, yes, we can start the process.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, it'll be the 8th, and hopefully that Barrington one is going to make it in time. It sounds like it will. So I'll email you, Andrea, to start that process so you can for that meeting.
That is correct. And then what will happen is the vice chair would be acting chair at the beginning of the meeting, and then we would have the election.
Perfect. And I don't have to leave the committee, right? Because I don't.
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
No.
I'm like, we're finally getting some sites. Okay, cool. So I will email you with that. It's been a pleasure to serve, and thanks, Marilee, for stepping up. My daughter screamed that entire thing, so I'm like seeing why it makes sense for me to make the transition. So with that, I think we can adjourn. We don't need we only need one mover for that, right?
That's correct. We only need one mover.
I remembered something. All right, so I'll take a person to move to adjourn the meeting.
Moved.
Thanks, Sarah. All right, awesome. Have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you back